It's the Locked On Bama signing day spectacular.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Boy, not much happening today. Sort of slept in, watched some reruns of Laverne and Shirley. Anything going on in your world?
I was more concentrating on another pair, James and Russaw. You know what I mean?
Was that today?
Yeah,
was that today?
You knew there was something in your calendar. Hey, this episode is brought to you by Sling TV. Love Sling TV. They're awesome. But oh, how I wish this episode was brought to you by Bojangles instead. Oh, God, if this episode was brought to you by Bojangles. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, we may get to that later. But, Jimmy, everything sort of went.
Give me a minute to keep laughing. Hold on. That was funny. Still sort of laughing.
Let's go ahead and tell everybody. All right, so Tony Mitchell from Thompson High School, superstar, 5-star / high 4-star safety, cornerback, hybrid kind of guy. They won another state championship, and he has been committed to Alabama for some time. He flirted with Texas A&M. He obviously flirted with Auburn. Some Auburn moderators thought that, he may end up flipping to Auburn. One in particular, Jason Caldwell, who's a buddy of mine, is a super guy. I mean, I like Jason Caldwell a lot.
Yeah, he's good.
But he posted that Tony Mitchell went so far as to tell him that he would be flipping to Auburn. He told him all this Monday. And there was something about, hey, we'll meet up on as Jimmy teleports out of the podcast, we'll meet up at a Bojangles on I-65 and have our little party and photographs or whatever. And obviously, Tony Mitchell didn't show up. And again, I like Jason Caldwell, so it's just kind of comical because I did have this image of Tony Mitchell's friends going, "Yeah," on the phone, like he says he wants to meet me somewhere. Where do you want me to meet? Tell him Bojangles on I-65. Yeah, meet me at Bojangles on I-65. Which one? Oh, just tell him any of them because it doesn't matter. You're not going to show up anyway. But I get, by the way. And again, I'm not poking fun at Jason because I like Jason. He's a super dude. But it's a funny recruiting story. And recruiting stories are going to be like this more often than not, people. They're going to be like this more often than not. Again, reporters like Jason who do a great job. Jason does a great job with what he does. You may not like him because he's an Auburn guy, but I'm telling you, I know him. He's a good dude. And I have no doubt in my mind that what he says happened. But right. I also have no doubt in my mind that Tony Mitchell has been playing this game as well as anybody, if you want to call it as well as anybody, or some people may call it as poorly as anybody. I don't know. But regardless, that is the new normal. And Jason Caldwell won't be the last beat writer left at a lonely Bojangles booth. I'm telling you, don't laugh too hard.
Sounds to me like every single Miami recruiting reporter is in a Bojangles right now in South Florida, lamenting the absence of Cormani McClain. So he was coming to Miami, and now I don't know.
I know it's weird. Now you brought him up, and Cormani McClain to Alabama, yes or no?
I go no.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Desmond Ricks may go to Alabama.
Agreed. Now,
I think let's talk about not predicting it, but possible. Very possible.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more. Alabama keeps Tony Mitchell. They get Quay Russaw and James Smith. They end up signing, I think on paper, this may be Nick Saban's best class. Now, 2017 is tough to beat, especially in hindsight. When you think about Tua and Ruggs and Judy and Najee and Brian Robinson, Leatherwood. I mean, a lot of dudes I just named are first-round NFL picks. So that's a tough one to top. But on paper, I think this one may do it. Now, will they be as good? I don't know, but I think you could certainly make the argument for it.
Yeah, kudos to us, by the way. We've been, obviously we do this show 5 days a week for a whole year, really. I think we'll cut it down to 4 shows a week during the summer. But kudos to us, by the way. We've been very consistent in saying that James Smith and Quay Russaw would sign with Alabama. There's been nervous days. There's been things that happen that maybe we weren't as adamant as other days, but we've been very consistent. And I say that only because on the show, in the comments to this show, and on Twitter and elsewhere, Luke, we've been disagreed with quite a bit by Alabama fans who weren't confident. They felt these kids, they were stressed about all the trips to Auburn and the flirtations with Auburn and their obvious valid interest in Auburn, which was real. But nevertheless, these kids are interested in multiple programs. Of course they are. You would be too if you're being recruited by everybody. You would, or you should, give everyone a listen. But anyway, we ended up right about those two. And hey, we're not going to be right about everything, but folks have to remember that with us, sometimes it's a guess, just like everybody else. We're guessing like everyone else. But there are also times where we know some stuff because we know stuff because we're locked on Bama, so we know stuff, and we hopefully we earned some trust with this Smith and Russaw stuff that we've been saying for months was going to be Alabama.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people certainly had reason to worry. And Smith and Russaw were both taking a lot of trips to Auburn. I get it, but in the end, I think if all things remaining equal, you trust Nick Saban, right? And look, here's the other thing. One thing I learned today, that now, less than ever, your state ties, your growing up allegiances, your whoever your uncle always cheered for, whatever, that stuff matters less than ever.
It never mattered too much, but you're right. It matters less now.
It has been going downhill. It is taking a decisive Enron dip. And I feel like, from here on out, it's mostly going to be NIL stuff. It's mostly. And again, I've talked about this on 2 different shows in Montgomery today. Like, some people are like disgusted by this. And I understand why you would be disgusted by it. I do. At the same time, it ain't changing. Now, they hired this new guy for the NCAA, and maybe, he'll get something done in Congress. And everybody just keeps saying that. But I haven't heard anybody say an idea. Like, it's sort of like when you would say, hey, why didn't somebody stop Sean Alexander? Yeah, that's a great idea. Why hadn't we thought of stopping Sean Alexander? Oh, that's right, because we can't. So it's sort of the same thing. Jimmy, let's go ahead and let me tell everybody about BetOnline. I love BetOnline. You love BetOnline. We all love BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the place to go to get that bet in. It is absolutely awesome. So easy to navigate, so easy to operate, and even easier to pay in and pay out. That's what you want is, you want to pay in, and then you want to win, and you want to get paid. So that's what BetOnline will let you do, bruh. Go check out BetOnline. You can bet on baseball, basketball, soccer, football, college pro, whatever you want. They got it. You can bet on different odds like Heisman odds for next year. You can bet on whatever you want to bet on. They got it right there at BetOnline. Teasers and parlays, play poker, whatever you want. BetOnline.net. It's where the game starts. All right, Jimmy. I'm going to just look at the class here really quickly. And, we got 6 5-stars. Caleb Downs, Keon Keeley, Caden Proctor, Justice Haynes, and Quay Russaw and James Smith. Okay. I say 6. Some sites may not have all those guys as 5 stars. Frankly, I think all of them should. I personally,
one site says you're a 5-star. To me, you're a 5-star. And I'm an On3 guy. I'm saying On3's got the most accurate rankings, and the On3 consensus should be the standard in the industry. That's what I'm saying. But at the same time, I'll say if ESPN's the only one that's got somebody as a 5-star and the other 3 don't, kid's a 5-star. If someone says you're a 5-star of the 4 services, you're a 5-star.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I also realize the irony of wearing a Masters Masters t-shirt while it's going to be 5 degrees tomorrow. But that just dawned on me. I just threw on a t-shirt. It's better than being shirtless, right? I mean, you don't want to see that.
Yes. Yes, Andre Smith, it is.
That would be we ought to get me doing the 40-yard dash with Andre as Andre Smith and just breast flapping for me. But anyway, so of the 5 stars, okay, or I mean, really say this about anybody in the class if you want to. I said this on the Montgomery station today. I believe this. People are going to think I'm crazy because everybody's going to go, it's either Smith, Russaw, Keeley, Proctor. I think Caleb Downs is our best signee. Nobody fired darts at me. I think Caleb Downs is our best signee.
I'm not firing anything. I agree. And it's tough to pick. Everyone's going to have their – see, I have who I think is going to be the best and maybe a personal favorite. I mean, sometimes my favorite isn't necessarily the best. It's just, hey, I'm really rooting for this guy for whatever reason. But of all the big names, and there's big ones. I mean, Keeley and Smith and Russaw and Proctor. But yeah, if you said, okay, which of these would you bet your real money is going to be a collegiate superstar? My answer is Caleb Downs, just like yours, Luke. And I say that even though he's a safety, and safeties don't have the draft value other positions have for a reason. They're not considered as impactful as a pass rusher, as a tackle, as a quarterback. But I think Caleb Downs is the best player of all of them. I think Keon Keeley is awfully close. I think Proctor's close. Those would be the top 3 for me, probably followed by Smith and Russaw. Just off the top of my head, but now I'm leaving out. Justice Haynes is another guy to me, Luke, and Richard Young. But I flip-flopped on this, by the way. Early in the process, I had Young ahead of Haynes. I've ended the process with Haynes ahead of Young personally. I can't imagine a world in which Justice Haynes is not a star running back in college football. So I put him up there. I like Hurley a lot. Might be a corner, might be a safety, but I like Jaleel Hurley a ton. I like Yanze Pierre a ton. Yeah, I mean, what a group. What a freaking group. And it'll be interesting to see who plays early. I think a lot of them might. And it'll be interesting to see where Alabama sort of aims in the portal. I expected Alabama to sign a few more guys. Let's be honest. I really thought Alabama would end up with either Arion Carter or Suntarine Perkins. They did not. I thought Alabama would end up with another corner. They may end up with Desmond Ricks. That's not over. But you might not end up with Ricks or Brown or Tyler Scott, who they sort of, I don't know if backed off is the right word. I think they really focused on Ricks and Brown late. But you might not end up with corners. So it's not, you're short a couple guys. But the good news for that is, Luke, there'll be room. Now there's room to add guys from the portal. And I would be looking, maybe I just wrote this on Bama Insider. I would look, Luke, towards cornerback, the offensive line, and tight end as those 3 spots. I think those 3 will be the focus in the portal, but that's not inside source. That's me looking at the signing list and the roster, and that's what looks obvious to me: offensive line, cornerback, and tight end.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. In fact, those. If there's one place that I think Alabama, or 2 places maybe I think Alabama could have done a little more, my take would be defensive line. Even though this defensive line class is arguably the best in this recruiting cycle, just because Peter Woods isn't in it,
right? Almost
deduct some points. But again, I hate saying anything negative about this class because I love it so much. It's just – if this class had Peter Woods in it, I mean, I'd be so thrilled. But This class is ridiculous. I mean, look, the other day, a week ago, plus or minus, we didn't think we were getting Caden Proctor.
That came out of the blue. I mean, it didn't for the staff who's maintained daily, if not weekly, contact. But we're not informed of every single thing, and we don't know that. But yeah, I mean, when I first heard that Proctor was a thing that could happen, I was not stunned. I wasn't stunned because we were so close to getting him this summer. but I was surprised for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, Jimmy, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some more of this signing class. All right, I know this episode is going to end up being a little shorter than I want it to be. We will have more of a wrap up tomorrow. Okay, everybody. Everything sort of come together. I got to go pick up my daughter, got to do a few things, but I want to keep going on this signing class. Jimmy, one guy you mentioned, we've talked about him before. First of all, let me tell you something about Perkins, who signed with Ole Miss. It is pronounced, and I got this straight from Joseph Hastings, who asked him personally, Suntarian. I know it's not spelled that way.
Suntarian.
And I have also said Suntarine Perkins. I said Suntarine Perkins during the whole Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. So did the other guys with me because they piggybacked off what I pronounced it. It is Suntarian. I don't know why.
Hastings is the hey, I believe it. Now here's the thing. He plays for another team, so I doubt it comes up much.
That's true. I hope we forget how to say it again. That would be the positive, unless he transfers here. By the way, Ole Miss. I mean, they have a lot of swings and misses here lately, and I mean, he's far and away
Lane
their best.
Recruit hard. Lane doesn't recruit hard. Lane doesn't recruit hard. I know that drives some people crazy because we have so many Lane fans in the Alabama fan base, but that's one part of Nick Saban that absolutely did not rub off on Lane Kiffin. He does not recruit hard. I guess he feels he doesn't have to.
Okay. You mentioned Yanzi Pierre a little bit earlier, and I'm telling you that you had the best sources around. I've got a couple of sources myself, and I can tell you the coaching staff is as fired up about Yanzi Pierre as anybody we signed. They have been saying, and this is not something that just came up. This is something they've been saying for a long time. Yanzi Pierre is going to be a problem. And if there's one guy that's not a 5-star on any site that I think ends up playing like a 5-star in his career at Alabama, is Yanzi Pierre.
Yeah, the coaches have different opinions in the recruiting services, which is great. They also have extremely educated opinions, and we should really care of how the staff rank. But it is true. I have enough inside sources to know, Luke, backing up what you said there. Not only I agree, I hear the same things from inside the walls that Yanzi Pierre is absolutely one of their favorite kids in this group in terms of who they believe is going to be a great player at the next level. So agree totally there. It just reminds me of a story years ago from one of our great early classes under Saban, an assistant coach right after it was signed. I think it's the 08 group. It's 08 or 09, somewhere in there. And we signed maybe the number 1 class in the country or number 2, whatever it was. It was really high. And the headliners were like Julio Jones and Marcel Darius. And I had a coach tell me this ended up being wrong, but it's right enough to point out how this isn't crazy in retrospect, even though it ended up wrong. But anyway, I had a coach on that staff that helped recruit that group years ago tell me that the best player in that class was going to be Kevin Norwood. He's like, Kevin Norwood's going to be the best player in this group. And that's just a great reminder. Yeah, that ended up wrong, but Kevin did end up being better than all of the projections, and he helped us win a national championship in 2011. So it was interesting that was the opinion, but it just says so much about how they have their own opinions. They don't go by the recruiting service rankings. They got their own opinions, and inside the staff, they have their own opinions. This coach said Norwood, another coach would have said Julio or whoever, and that's a good reminder of that, Luke. But yeah, I think if the staff produced a list of their favorites or who they thought would be best, it would not match up with the recruiting services. That's true.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And Norwood did beat the Honey Badger on a huge pass play in that national championship game. So that should be.
We won the national championship with Kevin Norwood's help. He was a great player. And on the day we signed him, if we had locked on Bama then, Luke, I don't know that his name would have come up, because we'd signed so many stars in that class. And I'm sure that there's somebody on our staff is championing Olas. Olas is like, hey, Olas can be the best player in this group. I mean, that shouldn't surprise us if that's an opinion that's held by one of the coaches.
All right. So overall, of course, Alabama is going to finish number one. Their average is going to be the average, for the player rating is going to be 94.76. That's consensus on 24/7, which is great to look at. But here's what's so interesting to me: Alabama 1, Georgia 2, LSU 6. Oklahoma, and I'm going to include Oklahoma and Texas. So I should include Texas at 4. Oklahoma 8, Tennessee 10, Florida 12. A&M 14, South Carolina 16, Auburn 19. I think that's 10 of the top 20 or top 19, really, all in the SEC. And so this goes back to, and I'm not going to get on a rant about this because we're talking signing day. This is why I don't want automatic qualifiers in the playoff, because when you have the SEC and they get half of the top 20 every year in recruiting, playing in the SEC ain't the same as playing in the American Conference or the Pac-12 or whatever. It's not or the ACC even. It's not the same. And in fact, I mean, I think an indictment on the ACC would be, Miami seems to be really the lone team that has his act together on NIL. I guess Clemson does a little bit. I mean, they did get Peter Woods, but otherwise, the ACC looks like they didn't clean up very well. And in fact, Auburn comes in late. Now, I know he's in-state cat and all that, but they come in late and still won FSU's best commits in Keldrick Falk with very little time. And that tells me that, people are going to keep migrating to the SEC no matter what. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But overall, a really big day, obviously, for Alabama. Alabama had a big day. I would say, Georgia finishes number 2, and I'm not taking any shots at Kirby Smart or anything like that. But, man, they missed out on some dudes. I mean, they missed out on Caleb Downs, obviously, in their home state, and Justice Haynes, who's a legacy. And then Ohio State. Ohio State took it on the chin a little bit to me, Jimmy, and so did Notre Dame. Notre Dame loses Keon Keeley to us specifically weeks ago, and then they lose Peyton Bowen, their top commit after Keon Keeley left, and he flips to Oregon. A lot of people thought he was going to flip to like Oklahoma or something, but he ends up flipping to Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon had a big day. Look, the recruiting rankings are always going to line up with this, Luke, as long as the SEC continues to be the most drafted from conference. When you add it all up at the end of draft weekend, after 7 rounds of the draft, and they add up, okay, which conference produced the most draft picks? It's the SEC, year after year after year after year. The recruits know this. They notice this. They want to play in the SEC to get the most attention, to prove themselves against NFL competition. As long as the SEC leads all the conferences in draft picks, they're going to lead all the conferences in recruiting. A little bit of a chicken or the egg thing. Maybe that's why the SEC is leading in draft picks, or maybe that's why the SEC is leading in recruiting. I'm not sure which came first, chicken or the egg here, but those two are unquestionably intertwined, and it's obviously from today's results going to continue.
Yes, it is. And Jimmy, we're going to talk a lot more about this recruiting class. I mean, some things are going to be a little bit more solid when we do the podcast for tomorrow, but we definitely want to get something out there today. A lot of guys to be excited about. Obviously, you still got Damari Brown as of this recording. Desmond Ricks is still out there. You mentioned Tyler Scott, but like I said, I think he ends up going to Auburn. Mm-hmm. So, and he's a good player, but I mean, he's a 3-star guy.
And the Keldrick Falk pickup was nice. I knew Q would have a solid impact quickly over there. And I'm telling you, next year in state, I'll go ahead and predict right now. Let's end on a bad note after such a great next year, Hugh Freeze is going to beat Alabama for a kid we want in Alabama. That'll happen in the next.
I can buy that. I can buy that. That's fair. Typically, historically, if Auburn has a moderately decent coach that cares about recruiting, they'll beat us head-to-head on some in-state guys occasionally.
That's right. I'm not saying they're going to have
they
won't have a better class than Alabama, but they will beat Alabama for a couple of kids next year. I have no doubt that's true.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for today's podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to join us tomorrow, and we'll be back with more Locked On Bama. Until then, roll tide.
Roll tide.